chess friends, welcome to the FIDE World Chess Championship 2024 Round 11. Today, I am going to show you an astonishing chess game that was played between Gukesh and Liren. Gukesh brilliantly played a move that forced Liren to resign the game. Gukesh is 1 point ahead of Ding, and that is a very proud moment for us. I will share the chess opening and tactics that they employed in the game. Gukesh's opening is just masterful, so, stay tuned until the end of the video. Gukesh started the game with knight f3, and here Gukesh could have gone for e4 or d4, but Gukesh understands that Liren is also an expert in chess openings, therefore, he chose the d3 opening, which forces black to consider d5, and here Gukesh could go with d3 or g3, but he chose to consider c4. That is a very good move to challenge Liren because it sacrifices the pawn. Moreover, Gukesh can take it back with e3, and black will not consider b5 because of the a4 approach. So, in this position, after c4 was played, Ding considered d4, pushing forward his pawn. Here, black's idea is to consider knight c6 and e5 to support the pawn, bring out the bishop, bring out the other knight, and white will consider e3 to attack the pawn. That is the plan, therefore, Gukesh immediately considered b4 on the board. Another move that Gukesh could have considered was e3 to attack the pawn on the d4 square. Now, black has to consider c5 following the opening lines. Then, after b4 attacking the pawn, black will consider knight f6, sacrificing the pawn on the c5 square, and this is a happy sacrifice because it emphasizes black's intent to consider knight c6 to protect the pawn, while simultaneously threatening to play e5. After the bishop moves, e5 will be considered, and that pawn structure will be well protected by black. While white tries to create some pressure on the center, black will happily consider bishop takes c5, which is good for both sides. Going back to the position, we discovered that e3 could have been played, but Gukesh chose to consider another way. We have before, and the idea for Gukesh is that whenever black plays knight to c6 to secure the e5 square, Gukesh will consider b5, deflecting the knight from protecting the e5 pawn. Then he can consider e3, followed by bishop b2, attacking the pawn. That would be a very good choice for white. Therefore, Ding has to consider c5, a masterful opening. Ding is from China, the #1 chess player, and Gukesh is from India, the best chess player from India. Both are facing off like the forces of water and fire. We have b5 to control the c6 square, and queen c7 follows in the game to prepare for e5, g3 follows in the game. Gukesh wants to consider, here Gukesh could play g3. I am showing you an alternative variation. Gukesh could play bishop g2, bringing pressure on the pawn. After the knight moves here, d3 and e5 pass, he would consider a4, and bishop p6 will come on the board. This position is prophylactic for both sides. Black has central pawns located on the dark squares, giving Gukesh a very good dark squared bishop to break open the center. Bishop g5 is not possible to attack the knight, so white cannot exchange the dark squared bishop. Meanwhile, white's pawns are located on the light squares, giving black a good light squared bishop to attack these pawns from behind in the endgame if possible. This position is very good for both sides. But in our actual game, Gukesh didn't consider b5 on the board. He played e3 to attack the center because he knows very well that the king has a very strong grip on the pawn structure. Therefore, if black considers pawn takes b4, Gukesh can make his central pawns very dominant, which would be a very good position for him. Black has to consider a5 to try to dominate on the queen side, but that is not so effective. So, back to the position, we discovered that capturing on b4 is not so good. Therefore, we have knight to f6, emphasizing control over the center. Bishop to g4 can arrive on the board to pin down the knight. We have a3 to protect the pawn while simultaneously preparing to bring the bishop to b2 to attack the pawn and open up the rook file. We have bishop to g4, putting pressure on the knight. Many players might think of playing bishop to e2 here, but that is a very foolish move. That's why they are world champions, and you are just a 2000 rated player, because now black can punish you by playing d3, attacking the bishop. That pawn is well protected, and after the bishop retreats, e5 will arrive with the idea of playing e4 to attack the knight, leaving your position devastated. you have to play h3, and after exchanges, e4 will arrive. You can see how black's pawns dominate the center, like soldiers invading your position. The queen has no good squares to go to. Even if the queen moves to g3, the bishop will attack the queen again, forcing it to move. Bishop to e5 will arrive to pressure the rook, which cannot block it. If you try to block it with your knight on c3, black can capture it, and after exchanges, the pawn will be 2 steps away from promotion. Therefore, going back to the position, white has to consider rook a2, threatening bishop b2. However, this won't matter for black, as black has something special. Black can lead with queen to c7, gaining access to the diagonal, even if white considers g4, threatening g5 to attack the knight and pawn simultaneously. It does not matter because black can capture the pawn on b4. After you capture it back, black can capture the c4 pawn, attacking your rook and bishop simultaneously. This position is just over because the rook cannot block it, the bishop cannot move to cover it, and your rook will hang. The game would be lost. Going back to the position, we discovered that playing bishop to e2 would be a very bad choice. Therefore, we have pawn capturing on d4, and after the capture, Gukesh had the choice to consider d3 to stabilize his structure. However, Gukesh did not want to lose his advantage because a5 would allow black to lead the game on the queen side. That's why Gukesh first considered h3 to question the bishop's position, whether it retreats or not. If the bishop moves to f5, Gukesh's bishop will go to b2 again, gaining a tempo on the pawn. After the capture and recapture, Gukesh gains another tempo on the pawn on b7. It forces Ding to consider queen c7, making the threat of considering e5 to protect the pawn. Therefore, Gukesh considers here d3, where Gukesh now can consider g3 to play bishop g2 to attack through this diagonal, and he will consider bishop b2 to put pressure on the pawn, and another move that he can play is bishop f2, a4. These moves can also be possible with the idea of playing rook e1 to get access to this half-opened file by playing castle. We have a5. And Gukesh closes the structure with b5 to maintain his pawn chain, where knight d2 and g3 can be possible to attack the pawn, and Gukesh has to close the structure completely with a4. Let's see what happens next, and if Gukesh ever gets the chance to put his knight in the center, this would be amazing. Even if he gets the chance to put his bishop in a good outpost, that would be very good for Gukesh, and Ding will face a majority of problems and troubles, and he might lose his position as a world champion. Therefore, after the knight move, we have g3, where bishop g2 can be possible to get access to this post. We have bishop g2, g2 on the game, and you can see that Ding is trying to attack the backward pawn on d3, where he can put his knight back, and that's what happened in the game. Knight to e5 is a threat, but Gukesh didn't have any fear of this because he is also a strong boy. He doesn't fear anyone. Knight to e5 has come on the board, and after the queen to a4 comes on the board, pinning down the knight, and here, many players might think of considering knight takes d3 on the board, and that looks like Ding gets some achievement for his position and gets his passed pawn. But hold on, this is not like what it seems and what is actually happening. That is queen to e4 to put more pressure on the pawn, and after the rook moves here, I can play f4, stare into your eyes, and attack the knight and another knight, and you have to consider f5 now. Then after g6, trying to get some tempos, and after capture and recapture happen on the board, the knight will just move back, and here you might think of considering queen takes d4, but hold on, here is something special for you. Can you guess what move black can play here? Ding is the world champion, and you are trying to challenge Ding. He will consider e5, putting pressure on the queen because now I can play the strongest move. If you capture the pawn on the e5 square, the move is b5 to c5, pinning down the queen to your king, and you have to say bye-bye to the queen. So, let me share an inspirational quote in sudden with you. Life is short, don't waste it with negative people who don't appreciate you. Keep them in your heart but keep them out of your life. Going back to the position, we discovered that capturing the pawn on d3 was a troubling move. Therefore, we have rook to d8 first, trying to protect the pawn on the d4 square, and then he will think about the d3 pawn, We have rook to d1 protecting the pawn because if you capture it with your knight is pinned down on the e5, and that will create some troubling positions for you. Therefore, we have g6, and after the pawn move here, we have h5 because Ding is trying to activate his pieces since his king has not castled yet, and because Ding is trying to lead his game, he played another tempo move. Can you guess what Ding played here? Ding is just a masterful boy, he is just spectacular among all chess players. He played g6, and that is a very good move because you cannot capture the pawn because there is queen takes knight, you have to play queen to d6, you have no other choice, and then comes bishop to a3, pinning down your knight, and there is knight maneuvering that Gukesh can play, moving knight to b3 to put more pressure on the knight. Your knight is also under attack, the rook can come here. The pawn on the b7 square is under attack by the bishop, therefore, Ding is not less than Gukesh, he also has twice the edge over Gukesh. He played bishop to h6 because Ding is older than Gukesh, he is trying to attack the queen, and the queen has only one square to go. The queen has nowhere to go because every square is well protected by Ding's pieces, therefore, we have queen to h4, this is the alternative variation that I am showing you. If queen to h4 happens, then black will happily capture the pawn, winning one pawn, and Gukesh's piece is not so capable of attacking the e7 pawn, the knight is blocking there, that is not so good because the queen is under attack, and Gukesh wants to be the world champion, he has to play a very strong move. The move that Gukesh played is bishop takes e5, sacrificing the queen as a tempo, because if you capture it, after capture and recapture, c5 will arrive, and after the rook moves, pawn takes a4 will arrive with the idea of attacking the knight, and with the extra piece, Gukesh will just win the game. So, going back to the original discovery, capturing the queen with the bishop is a very bad choice. That's the reason why we have first queen takes bishop, and after queen e4 arrives, Gukesh is attacking the pawn, the knight moves back to the c6 square, and we have knight to a3, can Ding capture the b6 pawn? Let's look at this, because there is rook to b1 attacking the pawn, and all the pieces, all the forces of Gukesh, will attack Ding's pawns. Ding will face many challenges, and he has to secure his position first, his pawn structure, therefore, he played rook to d7, where the rook is protecting the pawn, and after castling, another rook will come to protect the b7 pawn, and that's what happened in the game. A few moves later, rook to b1 arrived, and my pieces are together attacking the pawn. If Gukesh gets the opportunity to capture the a5 pawn, that would be very good for Gukesh. After the queen moves, we have rook to b5 attacking the pawn, where c5 followed by knight a3 and knight c4 can arrive to put pressure on the pawn. Another alternative move that Gukesh can play is moving the knight back to the a1 square, then putting the knight on b3 to put more pressure on these pawns, and that's what happened in the game. Knight to b3 happened in the game to put pressure on these pawns, and now, here, the best move for black would be to consider rook to d6. I don't know why Ding Liren didn't find this move. He is an almost 2800 rated grandmaster, and why didn't he consider rook to d6? I don't know why humans are just very inferior in chess against chess engines. If I get the opportunity to fight in the FIDE World Championship against humans, I am damn sure I will get 20 points to 0, I will get 20 points, and my human opponent, Magnus or Ding, will just get 0 points against me, and I will become world champion for sure. But this game is happening between two of the strongest human chess players, and that is so good, because now, after a few moves later, you can see that rook to f6 will arrive, and this position will be good for Ding Liren for making a draw, because Ding is playing with black, he has to go for a draw, that's my suggestion, but in this position, Ding doesn't want to make a draw, I think, that's why he didn't play rook to d6. Another alternative variation that he can play is knight to a7, but he didn't consider that move, he played e6, he doesn't want to make the game a draw, he wants to hide his rook on e7 to protect the pawn. Where knight to c5 comes on the board, now, you can see that all the pieces are working together to attack the b7 pawn through the b file. We have rook to e7 and rook to b1, attacking black's position. Here, Ding should have played knight to b4, this move was the best option and held significant value for Ding Liren, but he didn't find it. If knight to b4 had been played, knight takes b7 could follow. Black could then respond with the bishop retreating to f8 to protect the knight. Additionally, black could capture the pawn, and the knight on b7 would be pinned to the rook. The knight wouldn't be able to retreat because of rook takes rook, followed by queen takes knight, winning a piece. After capturing the pawn on d4, black could bring the rook into play, and once the queen moves, queen exchanges would likely occur. This would lead to an endgame where knight takes d3 becomes possible, resulting in a draw for both players. However, in our actual game, Liren missed the knight to b4 move. Why didn't he play it? Did he drink some alcohol, or was he distracted by a message from his ex? Instead, he played the blunder knight to c8. This was a critical mistake because now Gukesh could execute a powerful move, with a hidden smile on his face. Can you guess what Gukesh played in this position? Notice how the rook dominates the diagonal, the pawn is under attack, and the bishop and queen are working together to target the pawn. Additionally, the queen and king are aligned on the same rank. The brilliant move Gukesh played here was queen takes c6. This was a spectacular move by Gukesh. After capturing with the extra piece, Gukesh would still secure a winning position. If black dared to capture the queen with the pawn, rook takes b8 would follow, leading to the loss of the queen. With an extra piece, Gukesh would easily win the game in just a few moves. So, after queen takes e6, Liren succumbed to the pressure, resigned, and humbly acknowledged Gukesh's brilliance. This was a heartbreaking moment for Liren. Perhaps he needed to head to a coffee bar, watch my videos to sharpen his chess skills, and subscribe to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this game analysis. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wishing you all the best, bye bye, take care, and see you soon.